and welcome to this briefing. Today we're going to speak about the idle factor of the flight management system. The objective of this video is to understand the influence of the idle factor on the flight.
Nicolas, you see? I cannot follow the FMS descent profile and I have to use my speed brakes. Do you think it is normal?
Well, is the wind data inserted in the FMS correct and accurate?
Yes, I already checked it 2 times.
Then it may have to do with the idle factor.
Do you mean the idle factor of the FMS?
Yes, exactly.
But how can this value in my FMS explain the need to use the speed brakes to follow the FMS descent flight path?
I can answer you, but first I need to explain to you what is the idle factor. The idle factor is about the vertical descent profile of the FMS. The predictions of the FMS are computed by a dedicated performance database, the so-called PDB, that is embedded on board, integrated in the FMS. The PDB is based on the in-flight performance IFP model, the engineering tool for performance that simulates the average performance level of a fleet of brand new aircraft. Now, going back to the idle factor, the FMS computes the descent vertical profile with data from the PDB. The idle factor is then a corrective factor entered in the FMS in order to adjust the value of the idle rate determined by the PDB to the real idle rate of the aircraft.
Then, am I right to think that the value here, 0.5, is a value set at the delivery of the aircraft?
Yes, the idle factor set on delivery will correct the PDB to adjust the idle thrust rate to the IFP value. The idle factor on delivery is provided in the manual Aircraft Performance Data, APD manual, dedicated to the flight ops department.
Yes, but the idle factor for the A380 is 0. On my aircraft we have 0.5.
Yes, okay. Then the 0.5 is not the value set on delivery. Actually, the idle factor is used to correct the idle rate of the PDB in order to represent the actual idle rate of the engine that is degrading with time. In fact, every aircraft and every engine are a little different. The flight ops department analyzed via a monitoring of the flight parameters that an idle factor of 0 on this aircraft was too low, even on this brand new aircraft. They analyzed that an idle factor of plus 0.5 was necessary.
Okay, but what does this idle factor have to do with me having to use the speed brakes during the descent?
Well, depending on the idle factor value, the FMS modifies the position of the top of descent and computes a vertical profile based on the thrust adjusted via the idle factor. If the idle factor is too high, I mean that the FMS idle thrust is above the real aircraft thrust, this means that the top of descent calculated by the FMS is too early, and the vertical profile is less steep than necessary. The descent is longer than necessary, and the auto thrust must apply a higher engine thrust to remain on the computed path. This will slightly increase the fuel consumption.
Okay, but this is the opposite of what I have. I am above the FMS flight path, and I need to use the speed brakes.
Yes, it's coming. Indeed, if the idle factor is too low, I mean that the FMS idle thrust is below the real aircraft thrust, this means that the top of descent calculated by the FMS is too late, and the vertical profile is steeper than necessary. The descent is shorter than necessary. The aircraft has a reduced capacity to decelerate on the descent path. There is no margin to manage external interference like windy conditions. And the aircraft will probably be above the path with a possible need for speed brakes. It also slightly increases the fuel consumption as the aircraft is in cruise longer than necessary.
So, my idle factor is too low. I can update it then.
No. Airbus recommends that it is up to the flight ops department to calculate and insert the idle factor in the FMS. However, you as a pilot should report to the flight ops department if you observe the behaviors we just described.
Okay. Thank you, Nicolas. Now I understand better the use of the idle factor. The idle factor is used to adjust the FMS descent profile to the real thrust of the aircraft, considering that the engines will degrade over the years.
Yes, exactly. And a value that is not appropriate can result in an optimized descent profile. That is why, as a pilot, and even if you do not insert the idle factor in the FMS, you have a role to play in the surveillance of the idle factor. Also, continuous monitoring by the flight ops department is recommended. By the way, Airbus can help the operators in the monitoring and determination of the best idle factor via a service of its subsidiary, NavBlue.
We hope that you enjoy this briefing.
And see you around for the next one.